Hey guys, welcome to another huge episode of Triggered. And what an absolutely incredible week for America. What an incredible week for strength, for justice, and for American dominance. On the other side, we have Democrats continuing to push Covington 2026. Remember the Covington kid who was, clearly not racist, even though they charged him for this and confronted a Native American and it was all nonsense? Well, we have that happening right now. Covington 2026, continuing to fan the flames against ICE, continuing to lie at all costs, and it's going from bad to worse. We'll also sit down with Power the Future founder Daniel Turner to do a deep dive into all things energy policy and what's next in Venezuela and for American energy dominance. So guys, make sure you're liking, sharing, subscribing, okay? Just hit the little like button right now. It takes 2 seconds. Get it out there. Share this with your friends. Subscribe so you never miss one of these major episodes. Remember, if you do miss the show here on Rumble, go over to Apple, go over to Spotify podcasts. You can get us there. If your friends get their podcast that way, make sure they know about it. For all of the top headlines that we cover here on the show, go over to my news app, MXM News, like minute by minute, MXM News, where you can get the mainstream news without the mainstream bias. And of course, don't forget about our brave sponsors for having the guts to support this program. First, check out all the latest predictions on Polymarket. So if you follow politics, you know everyone's got an opinion. But on Polymarket, you actually get real odds on what's likely to happen. Polymarket is a prediction market where people trade on real events, elections, debates, policy moves, and it doesn't stop at politics. There are markets on the economies, tech, sports, pop culture, and so much more. It's all live, it's transparent, and it gives you a real-time indicator of what people really think is going to happen. So go give it a look at polymarket.com, check it out, and let me know what you think. And also, guys, don't forget about the Birch Gold Group, where you can diversify your savings and protect your future. The Trump administration is moving fast to right all of the left's wrongs. But with all the damage we've seen the Democrats do, it's always smart to be prepared. And that's why thousands of Americans are buying gold now from the Birch Gold Group. Here are the facts. In the past 12 months, the value of gold has increased by 30%. And Birch Gold makes it extremely easy to convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold. Or you can even buy some gold to store in your home safe. Just text my name, Don Jr., DONJR, to the number 989898, and Birch Gold will send you a free info kit on gold. There's no obligation, only useful information. It's about learning more and educating yourself. With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and tens of thousands of happy customers, take control of protecting your savings today. Again, text my name, Don Jr., DONJR, to the number 989898. And now, let's get into some of the top headlines. America is back. America is winning, and Democrats absolutely cannot handle it. Operation Absolute Resolved grabbed Maduro right out of his house, right out of his compound in Caracas in the middle of the night. And now he's sitting in a federal prison in New York City facing drug trafficking charges. And a post on X shared by the White House reveals absolutely mind-blowing details about this operation. The information allegedly came from an interview with a former Maduro security guard on the ground during the operation, who said, and I quote, "At one point, they launched something. I don't know how to describe it. It was like a very intense sound wave. Suddenly, I felt like my head was exploding from the inside. We all started bleeding from the nose. Some were vomiting blood. We fell to the ground, unable to move. I swear I've never seen anything like it. We couldn't even stand up after that sonic weapon or whatever it was." The interviewer then asked, "So do you think the rest of the region should think twice before confronting the Americans?" He responded, "Without a doubt. I'm sending a warning to anyone who thinks they can fight the United States. They have no idea what they're capable of. After what I saw, I never want to be on the other side of that again. They're not to be messed with." And guys, where are the Democrats? Are they celebrating? Are they thanking our troops for a flawless operation? Of course not. These are the same people who spent years saying that Maduro was a brutal dictator who needed to be removed. Chuck Schumer said it. Nancy Pelosi said it. All of them said it. Biden said it. Kamala Harris said it. They all said it. But the instant my father actually does something about it, suddenly it's illegal and reckless, an act of war. Give me a break. You know what's an act of war? Flooding America with fentanyl that kills 100,000 Americans a year. That's an act of war. That's the most clear and present danger to our country ever imagined. And my father finally did something about it. So what are Democrats doing instead? They're fanning the flames against ICE officers. They're out in the streets defending illegal alien criminals. They're protesting ICE. They're threatening federal officers. Take a look at what Ilhan Omar said at an anti-ICE rally in Minneapolis.
We are going to show all of them the door out. And we are going to make sure that these people pay for what they have done to us. I am going to leave you with this. I love this community. This community raised me as an immigrant. This community also sent me to Washington, D.C. as a refugee to represent you. I carry that proudly. I am not somebody people describe about the challenges you all are experiencing. I'm someone who has lived it. And what I tell you is this. What we are going through today is going to create a different kind of community for us. We are going to forge a different path forward. We are going to use every single lesson we are learning today to make sure no community gets terrorized like we are being terrorized by Trump and his goonies ever again. We are committed to this resistance. We are committed in building a community. We are committed in confronting our nation as a country of immigrants and making sure that dream stays alive. Thank you so much for being here. I love you all. We all love you. Everybody said people are not going to be out in the streets in Minnesota because it is too cold. Yes, it is too cold, but our hearts are warm enough to keep us in these streets to resist for our neighbors. Thank you.
Make sure these people pay? She's talking about federal law enforcement officers. She's talking about the men and women who are keeping Americans safe from violent criminals. And a sitting member of Congress is out there inciting people against them. That's the modern Democrat Party, guys. They'll cry crocodile tears over a narco-terrorist dictator getting arrested. They'll defend illegal alien gang members, but they won't say a single word of support for the American people who are finally getting the safety and security that they deserve. The media owes J.D. Vance and all of America a big apology. The Minneapolis ICE shooting is literally Covington 2026. The video clearly shows the ICE officer getting hit by a car. Of course, that's not the angle that went viral all over the news. They're not going to show you the good one. But when it came out, no one said anything. No one retracted. No one apologized. She literally comes right at him. It does not get any more conclusive than that. Check this out.
Listen, former fucking president, you want to come at us? You want to come at us? I say go get yourself some lunch, big boy. Go ahead.
Out of the car. Get out of the fucking car. Get out of the
Hey,
car.
baby, you want to come?
Oh!
And by the way, if she's just trying to drive away, why is her wife not trying to get in the car? And instead, she's instigating the officers and videoing it. Go, baby, go! Something like that, right? In other still images from the video, she makes direct eye contact with him and goes anyway. The fake news is always going to be fake, guys, but give me a break. These are agitators, literally trying to create this kind of chaos. driven by insane liberals, giving them the feeling that they can do no wrong and they're above the law, because that's how they've been treated. They've been coddled, they've been protected, they've been able to do whatever they wanted. That's no longer the case. The contrast could not be more clear, guys. My father is delivering wins, historic wins, generational wins, and Democrats are standing with criminals, dictators, and terrorists. Again, America is winning, and they just can't handle it. Joining me now, Power the Future founder, Daniel Turner. Daniel, great to have you back, man. How are you?
Thanks, Don. It's great to be with you.
So, our military just carried out one of the most flawless operations to capture Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela. Venezuela has 303 billion barrels of proven reserves of pure heavy crude, but PDVSA's infrastructure is also destroyed. It's been run by narco state for decades. It's just grossly inefficient, hasn't been maintained. What are the major takeaways from the White House meeting on Friday, and where does this all go from here?
Yeah, that meeting on Friday was really fascinating to watch and juxtapose it with how the previous administration treated the oil industry and oil executives, right? I mean, big oil is a pejorative in their eyes. And, you would see Joe Biden question their patriotism. Democrats in the Senate would bring them before their committees and wag their bony little finger and scream, right? And call them selfish and greedy and profiteering. And here you have President Trump that realizes their expertise is essential and says, well, we'll provide the security framework if you guys can go in and do what you do best. And, you see government officials all the time talk about private-public partnership and working with the private sector, but rarely do you actually accomplish that. It's usually big government idiots who think they know best and pushing the private sector out. And so just that alone is remarkable to see the way the president wants this industry to do the heavy lifting because he knows they're the ones who actually know how to get it done.
So, if a pro-American Venezuelan government eventually, revives production with the support of American energy companies, doesn't that fundamentally change OPEC's calculus? Could Washington use a rebuilt Venezuela oil sector as a permanent check on OPEC's pricing power?
Oh, absolutely. And remember, Venezuela is a founding partner of OPEC, and the whole purpose of founding OPEC was to be a hedge against the United States oil industry. So to have one of its founding partners now, I wouldn't be surprised if Venezuela pulls out of OPEC and there's a new Western Hemisphere oil alliance. And again, it's just an amazing sense of leverage that this administration sees with oil and oil markets. Because we didn't have this crazy spike. Just go back a couple years ago. If you had seen an operation like Venezuela, oil prices the next day would have gone up $10, $15 a barrel, right? That was the volatility in the market. This is a pretty major development in terms of oil. And the markets were relatively unchanged. I think it went up $1 by the end of the week. So there's so much resilience in oil markets. That's good for stable economies, stable pricing, and it's really great for America's new oil dominance of the world.
Yeah, I mean, aligning America, which is now producing more than probably we ever had, Venezuela, obviously Canada. I mean, I think that could be a formidable check that actually keeps prices down and also probably regulates, what China can do, in the region and ultimately their power, because they're only in Venezuela because they want the oil as well.
Absolutely. And I've had a lot of heated discussions this last week with people who say, America first is not about going into foreign countries. It's not regime change, et cetera, et cetera. But the pushback I've given deliberately and very aggressively is America first is preempting future worldwide catastrophe where America has to go then fix it, right? Yeah. 10 years ago, President Trump told the Europeans to stop buying Russian oil and gas. Remember that famous photo of one side of the table, the president sitting there, and there's Angela Merkel, and they're all pointing his finger and screaming. Well, no one listened to him. And what happened with a couple more years of buying Russian crude? Yeah. Russia invaded Ukraine, right? Joe Biden lifted all the sanctions on Iran. What happened in Iran? They launched October 7th and fomented terrorism worldwide. And so what happens with oil states, bad ones, is that we don't control these markets. They do.
Yeah.
They do hell. They unleash hell on the world. And then everyone points the finger at America and says, hey, you guys have to go fix this problem. So using oil as preemption, using oil as preemptive leverage to say, how about we stop the bad guys from ever doing bad things? Control the oil, control the world. I'm hawkish on that. Control the oil, control the world.
Yeah, because that is America first. You're right. I mean, America first is not, regime change, and they didn't do regime change. They left the rest of that government in place. They took out one bad actor who's clearly a narco-terrorist who's been indicted for years in the Southern District of New York. Not exactly a conservative place. America first is keeping, the bad actors of the world in check and not enabling them to sweep into our hemisphere and profiteer and power themselves for decades. I mean, that's definitely America first. I think the way they did it is about as America first as you could do it.
Absolutely. And if you believe that America is a force for good, and obviously you and I both believe that, then you want America to dominate this industry. And we can have this pie in the sky conversation. The world shouldn't run on oil. There's a lot of things that shouldn't happen in this world, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of, but we have to be realistic, right? The reality is oil makes the world go round. It runs the world's economies, manufacturing, transportation, shipping. It runs the world's military. Right. And so to repeat what I just said, control the oil, control the world. America is the ultimate force for good. And if we are dominating this market, we're not going to hold it captive, right? We're not going to stop people from getting it, but we are going to stop bad actors from using it to create and foment worldwide terrorism, to create and foment just hostilities, right? The biggest loser in all of this is clearly communist China, who doesn't have a domestic oil supply. And now they have to come to America to say, hey, would you sell us oil? That's a pretty different scenario than the past, where China could do what they wanted willy-nilly. So there's just...
Yeah, and I imagine we would gladly do that, but they can't hold us hostage for rare earth minerals. They can't hold us hostage for our supply chains and so many of the medicines that are made there. I mean, that seems like the ultimate way to create leverage and power without a war.
Absolutely. There's so much upside of this. It's remarkable, and it's not complicated. What it is brave, and I think that's one of the things that the president doesn't get enough credit for. He does bold things, but they're not complicated. We know what the solutions are. Just someone has to friggin' do it. Right. And we've been talking about whether it's Venezuela, whether it's Iran, whether it's, name the issue, the border. It's not complicated. Just someone has to have the political will to actually do it. And when it comes to oil now, we're seeing how this is a major force for good for the future.
So, you started talking sort of about like a Western Hemisphere oil alliance. What does this mean for Canada? I mean, it seems like they've lost pretty much all of their leverage here. It seems like they're making it as hard as they can to produce the energy that they have in the ground. I mean, that's sort of leftist policy and environmental nonsense. What's going on up there, do you think, as it relates to all of this?
Yeah, I think Canada is still very much buying the climate mandates, the low emissions, et cetera. I think quietly they're trying to keep their oil markets afloat. Because they are desperate for the money, right? It's a huge driver of their economy. And Canada has a lot of oil and gas, but they have a fairly left of center government. And it will be interesting to see if they continue down the path that Joe Biden tried to take America, which is punish this industry and spend hundreds of billions to create a wind and solar pipe dream. So if Canada were ever to get some serious legislators in, it would be great to see them rebuild their oil industry the way America is rebuilding its own, the way Venezuela will start rebuilding theirs. And then we don't have to worry about the Middle East. We don't care about tensions in the Straits of Hormuz. We don't have to worry about what Russia is doing because America will control the world's oil markets. And that's good.
Yeah, Canada and the renewables, I think the other point we have to make is all those wind turbines, the vast majority of the solar, all produced in China, all supplying China, and also when you talk about the manufacturing processes, and they're all disastrously bad for the environment, despite what they'd love to believe.
Yeah, and they're all made with oil. And that's the best thing, that they're all made from oil, gas, and coal.
Minor details.
And I've told people a million times, like, we can burn coal in America because it's bad, but we can let China burn coal to make solar panels and ship them across the Pacific and turn our farmland into solar hellscapes, and that's somehow green. And if you can walk me through the logic of that, then I'll convert. But as of now, I don't see how them burning coal is good, but us burning coal is bad. And it's the same with oil. We can pretend the world doesn't run on oil, but it does. And controlling the oil is controlling global stability. And for too long, we've let bad actors do that. And I love to see America back in the leadership of this industry.
So Daniel, we're now seeing the lowest gas prices since the COVID year. What specifically is the Trump administration doing to get those prices down? And what is the ideal price of crude? What are the big benchmarks for our energy dominance agenda?
Yeah, the real price of crude, the best price, depends upon who you're asking, right? I would put like a $64 price tag on it, 65. It's a little higher than where we are, because if oil gets too low, then you're not going to see future investment. And of course, then, prices will go back up, because without investment, supply will start to dwindle, and those are the natural ebbs and flows of this industry. It's a little bit higher than it is now. There's a little bit more profit, and people will continue to invest in the future of this industry. What the administration is doing, though, is it's setting stability, market stability. Again, President Trump, the best thing he's done for oil and gas is let oil and gas operate. Right? We didn't find a new oil patch. We're not fast tracking some new technology. What the president does, and this is not like minimizing it, this is tremendous humility. The president does is say, how about I let you guys do it? Yeah, I just get the hell out of your way. And that's what happened in less than a year. And look what happened to oil prices, because there's stability in the market. If you know you're going to get your financing, if you know you can get your permitting, if you know there's going to be land lease sales by the Bureau of Land Management, you can forecast and you can project, and you can start to develop stable industries. With Joe Biden, we didn't know what the hell we were getting. Remember Deb Haaland, the former Interior Secretary, one quarter didn't have land leases, which she's supposed to by law. Doug Burgum was then governor. He sued her on that. And when asked, she said indigenous knowledge told her. And you say, what the hell does that mean? I know you're half Native American, but what does that mean? Well, indigenous knowledge says we're not having land lease sales. So how do you build an industry if you've got some shaman who's determining that the spirits tell her you're not going to be able to have land this quarter? So just insanity led to chaos.
Honestly, man, it feels like a South Park episode every day sometimes when you hear some of these. That's how trillion-dollar decisions are made.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why oil prices were so high, because there was so much uncertainty and so much volatility. But if you know next quarter is X, then following quarter is X, if you know you can go to the bank and get financing, right, under the former administration.
Well, you may not have been able to get banked if you were in energy during the Biden administration, let alone financing. I mean, they were canceling energy companies. They'd cancel Second Amendment companies, anything that didn't fit the woke agenda. I mean, financing is like, that was like a dream. Just being able to be banked was a big deal.
Gary Gensler at the SEC said that if you had too much carbon on your balance sheets, that he was proposing that you would get higher base points in your deals with the Fed. And you're saying, well, wait a second, just because I have a lot of oil and gas loans, now you're going to charge me more than if I didn't? Again, how do you run a business? How do you run an account? Not even just the immorality and the illegality of that, but just the chaos it created. So now you can go to the bank and get a loan, and with that security, markets have all calmed down. Oil prices are low because markets are calm, and markets are calm because the adults are back in charge, and there's stability, and there's regular order, and it's remarkable same with the border, right? The border is calm because there's order and stability, and that's great for everything.
Yeah, it was never that hard. You just needed someone with the guts to actually do it.
Amen. Yeah, 100%. And that's what we are seeing. And that's why the future is really bright for oil. And that's why this Venezuela announcement is a big opportunity. You had a lot of wealth in that room on Friday, a lot of big companies. I mean, lot of wealth in that room. They, of course, want to work in Venezuela. And they all said, if there are the security guarantees, if the military is providing a space for them to operate, we don't need to, quote unquote, invest. And talk about ire. I used to get so sick and tired of the Biden administration talking about investment. We've made historic investments in. That means you just pissed away billions and billions of dollars, right? The government doesn't need to invest in Venezuela. The private sector will do it, and it will work. It's things that people like Milton Friedman have been saying for decades. He talked about that in 2004 during the Gulf operations. He had a plan about how to use private dollars to build back their oil industry and why that would be good for regional stability, et cetera, et cetera. Here's President Trump 20 years later resurrecting old Milton Friedman ideas because they're truthful, they're true, and they're good. It's just remarkable to see.
Yeah, and I think the American public probably doesn't, may forget that so many of these assets that the Venezuelan government has been using, and even if they've run them poorly, have still sort of, created, a petro-narco state. Those were American. That was American infrastructure that was just seized. It was taken away. It was nationalized, over the last few decades. These are guys just going back and doing what they were already doing. It's not even new territory for them. Their equipment's probably a little bit more worn down than it was when they left. Probably not as well maintained, but it's not like we'd be taking back anything that wasn't already theirs.
Exactly. And that's probably the advantage of this situation, is that you are refurbishing, and modernizing and upgrading is a lot easier than starting from scratch. So, it's like we're going into Venezuela and they have dial-up modems, right? Like, okay, so we'll bring more advanced technology, but the infrastructure is already in place. And there's a lot of Venezuelans in the oil and gas space who currently live probably in like Midland, Texas, right? So there is a lot of Venezuelans who will be happy to go back, want to go back to their own country, and operate in the industry that they loved, right? So there's so much upside of this that's why you have to focus on the ballroom or Minneapolis. You've got to focus on something to keep your anger up, because if you just were a logical, rational thinking Democrat, you would see this and be like, wow, that's really good. But you can't, because you can't ever give President Trump credit for anything. So you need to find another reason to be perpetually angry.
Yeah, so the administration lifted Biden's LNG export pause on day one. The U.S. is now exporting to 49 countries, and capacity is climbing to nearly 16 billion cubic feet per day in 2026. Europe is desperate for alternatives to Russian gas. I mean, I remember when my father, I think it was the UN, he spoke there and they're laughing at it. They want America to fund NATO to protect them from the enemy that they're enriching, that they're scared of. And I'm like, I've never seen a business like this. And it's like, well, why would they care if America's going to be the big dumb animal that just funds all of these things? But talk about the significance of this moment and that opportunity as well.
I think it was in the debate against Vice President Harris where President Trump pointed out the fact that the EU had spent more money buying Russian oil and natural gas than they had spent giving to Ukraine to defend them against the Russians. And so just this insanity that we're enriching our adversaries and our enemies worldwide. We have so much natural gas in parts of America that they flare it. We can talk about whether or not it's good for the environment and all that stuff, but it's so hard to get it in market because there were so many delays on pipelines and so many permitting delays that the cheapest solution is just burn the stuff, which is insanity, right?
Yeah, and for those who don't know what that is, I mean, that's when they literally have excess gas in the pipes. It doesn't make sense to do it, so they literally burn it. Like, you can fly into parts of Texas and it just looks like there's all these big bonfires, and it's literally just natural gas being burned at a pump site, that could be used, could be captured, could be sold, monetized, used for turbines, whatever it may be. We couldn't even utilize the energy. We were burning excess energy.
Yeah. And that's where we should be putting our AI data centers, right? That's where we should be building a lot of this infrastructure we're always talking about, because there is so much energy there that it would be cheapest. I was at an announcement with Secretary Wright on Friday about data centers and nuclear power, which is all very exciting. But my overall perennial question is, why are we not building data centers in this part of Texas or in the North Slope of Alaska, right? That's where all the energy is, and it's so much of it that they don't know what to do with it. But going back to your point on these LNG exports, the only reason why we're delayed is because of the 4-year hiatus of Biden-Harris and 4 years of stopping permitting. We should be building LNG facilities on the coast in multiple locations and getting this to our allies. I'm so excited about the pipeline Alaska is building that the Asian community is paying for, $40 billion, right? South Korea, Japan, et cetera, huge investment into this natural gas pipeline. So God's blessed us with so much of this energy. We have enough to power our own country. We should be bringing down all of our costs with it, and we can be supporting our allies as well. It's a great 250th anniversary message for the world. Like, we've defended the world, and now we're going to power the world as well.
As a percentage, Daniel, just curiosity, like how much does Alaska make up of American oil production?
Alaska is about like 500, 600,000 barrels a day. Now it's down from where it was, mostly because Alaska has been under the thumb of the environmental movement forever. And so anytime you try to explore in Alaska, President Trump gave them a bunch of permitting back in 2017. You've got environmental lawsuits. Alaska's everyone's playground, right? Environmental groups love to treat Alaska like a national park. So Alaska should be a lot further along than they are in oil and gas. The biggest reason why they're not is because of just endless litigation of green groups. But it should be a much larger percentage just because how much oil and gas is actually there.
So, the one big beautiful bill dismantled key provisions of the Inflation Reduction Act, which seemed to just create more inflation. They restored tax advantages for fossil fuels. They streamlined permitting. But California, New York, and other blue states are fighting back with their own regulations. Can federal energy dominance actually be achieved when hostile state governments are essentially running a guerrilla campaign against the industry?
That's a great question, and we're going to see that level of hostility from blue states. We see it on every other issue, right? Look at it on ICE and border issues and on immigration, right? All sanctuary city nonsense, sanctuary state nonsense. I'm hoping that federalism, just the structure of the country, will ultimately win, because if you are in Pennsylvania and you see what oil and gas is doing, if you're in New York and you look to your border south at Pennsylvania, you have to ultimately turn inward and say, why don't we have this in Utica, right? Why don't we have this in Oneonta? Like, why is Pennsylvania having so much prosperity and we can't? Oh, we can't because Cuomo banned fracking. Kathy Hochul has all these green laws on the books. It's going to be hard for America writ large. Of course, we'll have energy dominance, but a lot of states are going to fight it. And that's where the people, and that's where elections matter. Right, California.
Yeah, well, listen, I see it. I have a cabin in upstate New York, and I'm an outdoors guy, and I love my environment. But you go over to Pennsylvania, you see the action, you see the jobs. Everyone's driving a new pickup truck. You go across the border, up in that, let's call it that northeast PA. You cross back over into New York, and the level of wealth is not the same, and it's because of the energy industry.
And it's devastating. And California, should be a prime example of that. It has huge oil and gas assets and off the coast, inland, et cetera. But the governor's making it impossible to bring them to market, right? Quietly in the last couple of months, he changed a few things because he wants to run for president and he doesn't want more industry to leave. He kept a couple refineries open, right? All the grandstanding, we're going to close these refineries. And then quietly it was like, how about we delay this a couple more years, right? Just the way Kathy Hochul in New York recently delayed her gas stove ban, right? Well, if it's not good now, why is it good in the future? And the answer is it's not. So you're going to have these states that are using energy as a weapon against the administration, but the only people who suffer are the citizens, right? New Yorkers are not better off with a gas stove ban. Californians are not better off because of Gavin Newsom's green agenda. That's why they're all moving, including now the Google guys. They're all moving to Florida and Texas, right? So that's going to be a big fight, and the people are going to lose as a consequence.
So, Davos is coming up, big globalist meetup, and you've got groups like the Sierra Club and these other far-left, climate alarmists who will fly to Davos, usually on private planes, to lecture working families about their carbon footprint. Is there any good faith left in the environmental left, or is it purely about control?
I don't think there was ever really any good faith, especially in the last 20 years, right? That you hide behind climate change the way a radical immigration groups hide behind, kids in cages, right? Like you always use this agenda to push, or this issue that tugs at the heartstrings to push your radical agenda. And I think the climate movement, it's not dying or dead. It's way too big, way too powerful. Rakes in hundreds of millions a year from radical donors like George Soros, and but what for what, right? Like none of their prophecies have ever come true. Their movement is not It's not popular. Kamala Harris didn't even talk about it, right? I mean, where are the generals? Remember Joe Biden used to say, the generals tell me the greatest threat is national security. Where I've never heard one general say it. I've never heard a name attributed. Where did they all go? How come it's no
energy
longer-
dominance is national security, just so we're clear.
So I don't know what the climate movement does next. I know they're waiting, right? They're not going to go away. They're waiting for their moment, and they're Gavin Newsom to be president again. But it would be a great time to investigate where their money comes from, especially if it's foreign, and hold them accountable for the damage they've done to this country, right? We're a lot delayed because of their endless litigation. We used to talk about tort reform 25 years ago. Remember, it was a big, even Bush-Cheney years, tort reform, tort reform. We need to resurrect that. If only you knew someone to talk to about it, right? We have to stop this era that I'm going to start a pipeline and I can get sued by 45 different groups, and it delays me for 2 years and I spend millions of dollars. And then ultimately it gets approved because it's not illegal to build a pipeline, but the purpose is the delay tactic and to bankrupt you.
The process is the punishment, as we say.
Yeah. We need tort reform to keep the energy movement and just all of our industry going. We need people to resurrect that issue.
So, Daniel, your organization, Power the Future, fights not just for energy workers, but energy communities, places like Wyoming, West Virginia, North Dakota, the Permian Basin. What's the sentiment like, in those places right now? What do you think the morale is like for those workers who, have had great paying jobs, were trod on for the last 4 years? What's it feel like there now?
It's remarkable. There's so much enthusiasm and optimism and relief, right? You've got a bright future. These are real legacy generational jobs. When you go into these towns, whether they're coal towns or oil and gas parts of Texas or Wyoming, right? These are people, you do it, your dad did it, your grandpa did it, right? And we've stolen that from people, right? When we forced jobs overseas. Same with textiles, right? When we closed down North Carolina textiles and sent them to China, we ruined small towns and took away that part of community. It's great to see the energy industry getting respect, getting support from the administration, from government, but it's great for them to build these legacy generational communities and jobs and knowing they have a future. So that's why I started Power the Future, right? It was easier to just pretend, learn to code, we used to tell them, right? That the arrogance and the hubris and the cruelty to say that to fellow Americans because you're afraid of the weather. So that's
the irony of the learn to code movement. It was all done by the elites in jobs that will actually be replaced by AI. AI, at least not in the foreseeable future until robotics really catches up. AI is not going to replace, a pipe fitter. It's not going to replace a roughneck. It will replace, a journeyman journalist, journeyman lawyers. All these people, they'll be replaced by AI in 2 seconds. So the irony of the people who said that with such disdain for hardworking Americans, their families, their well-being, and their jobs, those are the people actually going to be more displaced than anyone.
Yeah, exactly. And these are the jobs that make the economy run, and they make the military run, and that transport and irrigate and cultivate. And so every time people keep saying, like, why are prices high? How come prices? Well, because you had 4 years of high energy, and 4 years of high energy, all that gets pushed into the price point. The example I use all the time is beef, right? Beef prices are high. Of course, yeah, they're really high. But you know what? The beef that we eat in America is 3.5 to a 4-year-old steer, which means that guy was fattened for 4 years under diesel at $7.50 a gallon. So every piece of grain he ate, every hay he ate was all cultivated and cut and harvested. And so, beef prices are high. But you know what? Our farmers are now preparing for spring, and diesel's $4.25 a gallon. So that means everything they're going to plant is going to be a hell of a lot cheaper. And it will eventually get to the price of beef. But it's
that's the problem. Everyone sort of expects it to happen immediately, but it's hard to undo 4 years of disastrous policy overnight, even if there's a long-term plan, even if you're going to get there. For some of these policies, certainly in energy and otherwise, I mean, the next beneficiary, the biggest beneficiary of that won't just be the American people. It'll be whoever's sitting in the White House in 2028, because they're going to get natural credit for these improvements that were really done by my father, but will take time to actually disseminate into the ethos.
100%. And the quickest, thing to come down was the actual price at the pump, but that's a really easy thing to make. And so when you have cheap oil, you get cheap gas because it's produced right away. Like I go back to beef. Beef takes 5 years, 4.5, 5 years to make. So all of those years accumulated, squeezing inflation out. Another thing the great Milton Friedman would talk a lot about, squeezing inflation out of the economy. It takes time. And the president's only had the job for not even a year yet. So I understand people's frustration and they want prices to come down. But this is why on the front end, you don't elect people like Biden and Harris who tinker with every aspect of the economy, who go to Deb Haaland with her indigenous knowledge, right? Who Jennifer Granholm with her billions of investment. When you have all these idiots tinkering outside of their it should be their right, let alone their skill set, this is what happens 4 years later.
So, Daniel, I guess my last question is, what will it take to make sure that this American energy renaissance is actually here to stay?
That's my biggest fear, right? You know that wonderful expression that hard times create tough men create good times, however it goes.
Yeah.
We are in the tough men situation right now because we had hard times, and we have some tough men in obviously the president and his administration. And those tough men are going to create, or strong men are going to create good times. Oil is going to create a good time. My concern is that when we're in the middle of those good times, that's when you start creating a bunch of weaklings again. And when the economy is great and the world is quiet and calm, that's when we're like, you know what? I think climate change isn't, oh boy, and here we go again. This is why elections matter. We have to keep the weak men out of office. And the good times are on their way. I love the expression of American, the golden age. I love our 250th celebration that we're getting ready for. But my deep concern is that when we are in the fall of 2028 and we've had a couple of years of good times, that all the weak men will start trickling out of the sewers again, and with their messages and their nonsense, and we have to make sure they never get power ever again.
Well, Daniel Turner, thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it. Great having you back on.
Thanks, Don.
Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Remember to like, to share, to subscribe. Check out our sponsors down below and in the video description, okay? It takes guts to support this kind of programming, okay? Hit the like button. It doesn't take any time. Share it. Check out the sponsors who have the guts to do this, okay? Support those who share your values. Stay strong, stay engaged, and stay a little bit triggered. Thank you, guys, and I'll talk to you all again very soon.